If you are a fan of Christopher Nolan's films, then you will know that there is usually a lot to speculate on when the credits roll. Whether that is an open ending that you are meant to speculate on, or a certain mystery that was left unsolved and you are left to theorize on at the end. His works are never easy to understand, or at least passively understand. You need to dig deeper in order to find the answers to the questions that you have. And the film Oppenheimer is no exception. While the story is in its raw form, just the raw experience of a person, there is still much you are left to speculate on at the end of the film. And one of those big questions coming out of the movie is, why does Nolan choose to have the movie go back and forth between full color and black and white, or monochrome? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And for everyone joining, welcome to episode 2 of my series covering the cinematic masterpiece of Oppenheimer. I only laugh because I sound so pretentious calling something a cinematic masterpiece. Art is subjective, and in my subjective opinion, this film is a masterpiece. There's so much that I want to talk about with regard to this film, and so many things that I believe deserve their own video, or else they would get lost in the sea of information that I could be talking about. And so I'm doing a series covering the different aspects of what I think makes this film a masterpiece. And today we are going to be talking about my theories as to why the film utilizes the visual style or the color style that it uses. So if you want to check out part 1 to this series, which was just my overview kind of general review of my thoughts on Oppenheimer, you can absolutely watch that after this video. It's in no way required to watch this video, but you can absolutely watch it afterwards. But now that my review of Oppenheimer is out of the way, I am going to be talking to you all about specific ideas that I find so fascinating and so amazing about Oppenheimer. So with that said, I hope that you enjoy this video, and we're going to get right into it. But first, a word from our sponsor. I'm on a mission to make content creation my job, and to do that, I need your help. In the description, there is a link to my Patreon where you can support me in exchange for benefits, as well as a link to my Twitch channel where you can support me through subscriptions and bits, as well as a PayPal if you're feeling generous. Thanks for listening to my speech, and we're going to get back to the video. While the story of Oppenheimer is not in and of itself a mystery, there are certain production choices that we are meant to question as an audience. And the biggest one that you can come away with is, why did Nolan choose to shoot this movie in both color and monochrome? And for anyone who doesn't know, black and white is called monochrome. I'm just gonna say monochrome because it will save time. And I've heard many good theories as to why Nolan took this visual approach to the film. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to lay out the theories that I've heard for why this is. I'm going to give some arguments in favor of this theory, and at the end I'm going to speculate for myself on what I think the true creative reason was. Of course, I can never know that. I don't know Christopher Nolan personally. We are two different Chris's in two different calibers. So with that said, let's get into the first theory that I've heard. The first theory that I heard is that all scenes shot in full color are purely a subjective experience of Oppenheimer's reality, where we are viewing the world around him and his own thoughts through his own head. And by contrast, all of the monochrome scenes are meant to be an objective look at Oppenheimer's life, kind of detached from his own personal thoughts and reflections. So in short, full color is subjective reality and black and white is objective reality. Now, I heard this theory before I watched Oppenheimer for the first time, and so for the whole movie, I was looking to see if this theory was correct. I was testing the theory in real time as I watched the movie. And from what I saw and what I experienced, this theory absolutely holds up. Not only does this theory work, the colored reality being Oppenheimer's experience and the monochrome being an objective look at Oppenheimer, but there's also a dialogue happening between the two realities as you watch the movie. The monochrome reality would ask a question about Oppenheimer's life or speculate on a decision that he made and why he would do that. They question his motivation, and then the color reality would then answer that question for us through backstory. The monochrome reality is removed from Oppenheimer's life and doesn't understand his motivations or his reasons for the actions and decisions that he made. But the color reality is Oppenheimer's raw thoughts and emotions projected onto film. And while this color reality isn't actually verbally answering the questions for the audience or for the monochrome reality that is speculating on his life, we as the audience begin to understand his motivations and the answers to the questions that they are asking in the black and white reality. So this theory does absolutely hold up. However, there is another theory out there, and that is that these two realities, the black and white and the color reality, represent the stories of two different characters. And that would be the characters of Oppenheimer, the protagonist of the film, and Louis Strauss, the antagonist of the film. I didn't really talk about this in my review of Oppenheimer, but Louis Strauss was the former acting Secretary of Commerce in the United States. And he was also a part of the Atomic Energy Commission, while Oppenheimer was also a part of that organization. And in the film, he is portrayed to absolute perfection by Robert Downey Jr. He is the one who essentially orchestrated a kangaroo court for Oppenheimer in order to revoke his security clearance and discredit him publicly. He had Oppenheimer labeled as a communist sympathizer so that his anti-nuclear policies could be ignored, because Louis Strauss was of the opinion of nuclear expansion and growing the US's arsenal in order to compete with Russia. And so one theory goes that the colored reality, again, is the experience and the life of Oppenheimer, and the black and white reality is the reality of Louis Strauss. And this theory also makes sense. I was talking before about how the color and the black and white realities could represent subjective and objective reality, and in a way that is still true, because Strauss doesn't know the experience and the emotions of Oppenheimer, so any speculations that he has as to Oppenheimer's character are removed from the person of Oppenheimer. And so, in a sense, both theories are true. And no matter which theory you stand by, either way, Oppenheimer's story, the color reality, is still the raw, unfiltered experience of Oppenheimer. It's just a matter of whether you assign a character or a person to the objective reality of monochrome. And there is another way that we can speculate on the use of color and black and white, because this is not the first time that Nolan has used this exact trick. He has done that before in a previous project of his, Memento. And just to give a quick summary of Memento for you, it centers around a character who is suffering from amnesia, and he is spending the film trying to put together the pieces of life events that led him to where he began the film. And in that film, the color reality is moving forward in time, trying to piece together the events of what happened, trying to uncover the story ahead. Meanwhile, the black and white, or monochrome reality, was reviewing the events of the film in hindsight. And the two perspectives converge at the same point at the end of the movie. And the result of this is a full experience for the audience. They get to watch the same film but through two different lights, and both of these perspectives converge at the same point at the end of the film, resolving all questions that each previous reality asked. And Oppenheimer basically does the same thing, although a bit more nuanced. And so to talk about what I'm going to talk about, I need to go to the whiteboard real quick. I hope you all can see this. This is the entire timeline for the film Oppenheimer. All of the events that take place within the film take place between the years of 1924 and 1963. 1924 being when Oppenheimer was studying physics in Europe, and 1963 is his reception of the Enrico Fermi Award. I hope you all can hear me. And these other points, this timeline isn't to scale, by the way, at all, just so you know. These other points are the major core events of the film. That is the Trinity test in 1945, a conversation that took place between Oppenheimer and Einstein somewhere between the years of 1947 and 1953, Oppenheimer's Security Council meeting in 1954, in which his security clearance was revoked and he was labeled as a communist sympathizer, so this was that, and a Senate hearing held for Lewis Strauss in 1959. I'm going to attempt to draw this in real time, by the way. Now, the colored timeline, which is Oppenheimer's perspective on the events of the film, begins here at his Security Council hearing, and all of the events that are shown in the film are his recollection of the events from that point in time. So we're going to draw a line that goes here, and then events are shown from his study onward in a linear fashion. This looks terrible, I'm going to redo it. Meanwhile, the black and white reality of Lewis Strauss is looking at the events of Oppenheimer from here, his Senate hearing. This narrative looks at some of the events in Oppenheimer's life from the Trinity test onwards. So we're going to draw an arrow to here, and this is the time frame that the black and white reality takes place in. And the two narratives, the two timelines, converge here on Oppenheimer's conversation with Albert Einstein. This event was first seen at the very beginning of the movie from Strauss's perspective in black and white. But at the end of the movie, we see this conversation unfold in full color from Oppenheimer's perspective. So this conversation between Oppenheimer and Einstein is the start point and end point of the film. It is both the inciting incident and the conclusion. For the whole film, the black and white reality is trying to solve the question, what did Oppenheimer say to Einstein in this conversation? It is the question that drove Lewis Strauss mad and is one of the many reasons that he distrusted Oppenheimer and tried to have him discredited in the eyes of the US government. And then finally, at the end of the film, we realize that Oppenheimer and Einstein weren't talking about Strauss at all, and it's his own ego that made him assume otherwise. This film, Oppenheimer, is the perfection of the Christopher Nolan narrative formula. Alright, we're gonna put this down now and talk about another thing. Now, of course, these are only theories, and we can only speculate on the true purpose behind Nolan's use of color in black and white, but he does give us one clue as to what this motivation was. And that is that he uses text to label both of these realities. At the very beginning of the film, we are given subtitled text for the colored reality and the black and white reality. The colored reality is labeled number 1, fusion, and the black and white or monochrome reality is labeled number 2, fission. And these labels are shown on screen when we are given our first look at Oppenheimer and Strauss. And for those of you who know a little bit about nuclear physics and know where this is going, this makes the dichotomy of the two characters very interesting. You see, when attempting to create nuclear energy, the two processes that can be used are nuclear fusion and nuclear fission. Nuclear fusion is the process of fusing atoms in order to produce energy, whereas fission is the splitting of unstable atoms to create energy. And this gives us our big insight into the difference between Oppenheimer and Strauss. It is apparent that both of these people believe themselves to be larger than life. They both possess very massive egos in their own way. Oppenheimer was an egotistical scientist with a god complex, and Lewis Strauss was a control freak who wanted to climb the ladders of power in the US government. Strauss makes the claim in the film that if Oppenheimer had the chance to go back and do it all over again or undo the invention of the atomic bomb, he would do it all again because he loved the attention that it gave him, and perhaps he's right. So these are both inherently flawed people with very inflated views of themselves, but the main difference is the people that surround them. Despite Oppenheimer's personal flaws, he is surrounded by compassionate and confident people. His wife stayed by his side for their entire lives, despite the numerous affairs that he had. He may be known as the father of the atom bomb, but he was surrounded by a team of brilliant and capable scientists who helped to bring the machine into reality. And when the time came for his Security Council hearing, his loyal friends stayed by him because they genuinely cared about his reputation and him as a person. Fusion requires multiple atoms in order to spark a reaction and produce energy. And in the same way, Oppenheimer is the hero of the story because he is surrounded by confident and capable people who care about him and elevate him to that level. Strauss's main flaw, and the reason that he was ultimately unsuccessful, I believe, is because he was alone. Sure, he had aides in the Senate hearing who tried to help him, but Strauss went behind their backs to try and undermine due process. He did this in an effort to save his own skin, acting in self-preservation. This move backfires and is one of the many things that led to his downfall. Just as fission is achieved by one unstable atom splitting itself, Strauss failed as a villain because he had no one in his corner. In his instability, his life's work fell apart, and he has no one to blame for that but himself. And this is the meaning behind Christopher Nolan's use of color in Oppenheimer. And that is also it for this video. And if you've stuck around to the end, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for indulging me and my speculations and my theories. Also, I hope you like this fancy little diagram that I did here. This is the first time I've done an arts and crafts project for a video, but I'm pretty satisfied with how it turned out. Nolan's timelines are always extremely complicated, and so I love to diagram things in order to get the point across, or get across the dynamics of the timeline. This film is a masterpiece, and one of the ways that it is how Nolan uses color to convey story and convey character. And this is just one of the many aspects of this film that I love, and I'll be exploring many more of the things that I love about this film in future videos and future installments of this series. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Of course, a huge thank you to my patrons, Sean, and my top tier patrons, RD and Snowy. Thank you all so much for supporting me and supporting my content and my desire to do this for you all full time. I erased all your names from the board in order to do this video, but I'll put them back on right away. And for those who don't know, I stream weekly on Twitch, and normally the patrons' names are on this board in the background of my setup as kind of a thank you for supporting me and supporting the content. And so they exist permanently in the background of my streaming setup, and I'm gonna put your names back on the board right away. You know what I should do is I should get an easel for when I bring out the whiteboard to do these talks. I think that would be very nice and very helpful. I hope this video wasn't too loud. I'm just looking at the waveforms on my laptop here, and I might have gotten pretty loud towards the end. I'm sorry if that's the case. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next week for another installment of this series. I hope that you're excited for that, because I know that I am. And cut.